have some new polling numbers from the 2024 Democratic presidential primary contest. Joe Biden is still leading with 60% of the vote, while Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has enjoyed small gains on the presidential race. He's got 19% of the vote. Marianne Williamson has hit double digits. She is at 10%.
Now, Kennedy recently sat with Fox News' Jesse Waters in Central Park, where he railed on mainstream media for not allowing him to speak directly to their audiences.
CNN, MSNBC, did they invite you on?
No.
Why not?
You would have to ask them.
It seems like you'd be a natural fit over there. What do you think's changed?
CNN and MSNBC have become, openly partisan and very, very much aligned with the Democratic National Committee. And, they share the same sort of anger at my candidacy, and they don't, they'll do stories about me, but they won't allow me to talk directly to their audience.
Speaking of CNN, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries took to the network yesterday where he insisted voters know Joe Biden is a good and decent man, and he has nothing to worry about going into 2024.
Are you confident when you look at what the Justice Department has done, when you look at the investigations into Hunter Biden that the Republicans have pursued up to this point, that there hasn't been any wrongdoing, everything's been above board?
Yes, I'm extremely confident. The American people know fundamentally that Joe Biden is a good and decent man who's dedicated his life to public service and will continue to serve the people honorably and admirably. On the other hand, you've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos and others who are running the show amongst the House Republican majority. It's an extreme group of people who aren't really trying to improve the lives of the American people. As Democrats, we're going to continue to put people over politics and to focus on lowering costs, better paying jobs, safer communities, growing the economy for the middle class, and delivering. That will be a clear contrast that will be available to us to present to the American people in November of 2024.
Does that ring true to you?
A man couldn't miss the point more. Who does he think he's convincing with this? Does he think that there are working class and poor Americans that are watching this program that said, well, cost of living has gone up exponentially over the last 20 years. Inflation is still making the price of groceries in the store difficult for me to feed my family.
Just as George Santos, the leader of the Republican Party, wanted.
The cost of education is skyrocketing. The cost of transportation is skyrocketing. But Hakeem Jeffries got on TV and told me that Joe Biden was a good person. So all is fine in the world.
That seems designed to push back on the corruption and the Hunter Biden accusations. I guess that's how they're trying to deflect from that. No, he's just a great father, best father, America's father, really. I don't.
Sounds like you were slipping into your Trump impression a little bit there. He's the best father.
Many people are saying such a good father. It's the first time hearing about it. Anyway.
Yeah, he also really misses the point about why people find the extreme right faction of the party to be inspiring. I think a lot of Republicans, they look at what, let's say, the priorities of the Freedom Caucus are, and they don't necessarily even agree with those priorities. Because there's poor and working class Republicans, too, who don't exactly think that, disbanding the FBI is going to put food in their stomach. Mm-hmm. However, what they do see is that there is a diversity of opinion among the Republican Party and a faction that is willing to fight ostensibly for them, at least in theory, for them.
You're kind of saying, say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism, but at least it's an ethos. Is that what you're doing?
Yes, except for that. I think that's,
Let's go.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to go back. If you want to say more on this, go ahead, because I want to go back to RFK Jr.
Sure.
You were talking about, why we've been discussing him a little bit less in maybe the last, 2 weeks or something, which you can have a news cycle. You can, fade from the news cycle a little bit. There's no reason to think he might not come back. I do think his candidacy over time was drawing more and more, and it continues to draw more and more support from right-wing people. Obviously, that's not entirely true, and he's running as a Democrat, and actually a lot of Democrats have been turned off by Joe Biden's policies, particularly on foreign policy and COVID, where RFK Jr. is, most at odds with what mainstream Democrats want today. Mm-hmm. However, because of those are now kind of right-wing things, he had a lot of right-wing interest. And I think some of that right-wing interest is now that we've had the debates, there's more focus among right-wing people. Well, what is DeSantis think about this? What does Vivek Ramaswamy think about this? What do the other candidates think about this? And maybe that's why he's faded a little bit. Although, Fox News is still having him on. He just did that interview that we played some of with Jesse Waters, and he could very much have a media resurgence.
I think two things are happening here. One is what you've just pointed out, which is that now that there's real conservatives in the race, there's no need, or they've always been in the race, but now that there are media events that are highlighting the words, thoughts, and feelings and policies of actual conservatives in the GOP race, there's less of a need to cater to or really platform RFK Jr. from the conservative. But also, I do think that, some of the substantive gaffes, let's call them, that he had at the end of last month. You can say that they were in bad faith, but I do think they ultimately dinged him. I think a lot of this organic, real support that he did have on the left for his anti-war views was really diminished by his stance on Israel-Palestine. I don't see him on my leftist timeline at all anymore. I don't think that there's anybody who has much confidence in him because Palestinian rights are such a foundational issue to the left. And then back on the right, I do think that the liberal press was enjoying using him as a kind of a whipping boy to make to grandstand about how terrible certain conservative beliefs were that they thought were being funneled through and platformed by RFK Jr. And now that there are so many other conservatives saying other things that are considered to be wrong and out of step with public opinion, Democrats can just talk about what Vivek Ramaswamy or DeSantis or somebody like that has to say. They don't need him anymore to make the argument that Republicans.
He still seems very popular, I should say, among some of my people, among many libertarians. So I don't know if there's an opening for him there, if he's so committed to remaining a Democrat and seeing this through. But it looks to me like there's an opening for him
to this particular interview. I mean, many liberals have been arguing that the only reason that the right has been interested in RFK Jr. is because since he's running as a Democrat, they are just elevating him as a knock against Joe Biden. And I don't think that that's necessarily. I don't think it's fair to use that argument to discount what I think is legitimate organic interest in RFK Jr. However, I do think that that is obviously happening. Do I think that Jesse Waters is ever going to vote for someone like RFK Jr., genuinely supportive of someone like RFK Jr.? Not really. It obviously advantages conservatives for there to be more division in the Democratic primary. I support that, by the way, because I think there should be a real primary. But I do think that's part of what's happening when you see them kind of scoop him back up out of irrelevance.
Sure, although I don't want to underemphasize that, he is taking the fight to Biden on two or three issues, again, in particular, the COVID stuff and the Ukraine stuff, where, conservatives are all about what he's saying and are cheering him and, want those policies enacted and wish the Democratic administration would be less inclined to require vaccinations and lockdowns and everything else, and the funding of Ukraine. So he is, it's not just like they're not just platforming and celebrating and putting any Democrat on a pedestal because, suck at Joe Biden. They're doing this to someone who is most vocal on things that conservatives and independents and libertarians and contrarians and dissident Democrats think should be heard.
Well, look, I'll say this. They had Newsom on. Newsom is not some counter-establishment rabble-rouser, but the idea that Gavin Newsom would maybe get into the race was enough to get him a platform on Fox News. They've had Marianne Williamson on, who isn't a big kind of COVID anti-lockdown sort of a personality.
Well, they've had them on, and they should. That's a good,
of course they should. But the argument that they are platforming RFK Jr. kind of largely because they just believe in what he stands for. I'm not saying that there isn't that overlap of ideology. There obviously is. But I also do think it's a lot about wanting to stick it to the Democrats. And again, I don't have a problem with that at all. I'm so glad that they have an opportunity to go on Fox News. I just think that it's a little bit of a mix-up. If these people were not, if they were independent candidates, if they were somehow not advantageous to the Republican effort of splitting the primary vote and getting digs on Joe Biden, I just don't think there would be as much of an opportunity, of an incentive rather, to go ahead and do it. Yeah. Well, I think that's all for us on this topic. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.